The projection for the offense is 5th, which is a little down from last year where they were 2nd and they were 1st the year before in our DVOA numbers. And I think that's all just the loss of Davante Adams. Normally, when you lose a player who's that productive, you do go down a little bit. And I know that there's a lot of arguments have been made about both Green Bay and Kansas City. Strangely, I don't hear the same arguments about Tennessee, but I do hear them about Green Bay and Kansas City that they added enough like smaller pieces and the quarterback and the scheme are good enough that they won't miss that number one guy as much as you think they will.
Right.
I'm curious what your guys' take is on that idea.
I mean, I think when you have a quarterback that good, it is definitely true. When you have one of those 3, 4, 5 guys, like I think they can afford to lose, a Davante Adams. I mean, it still sucks, obviously. And like you said, they are still going to be worse. But if you can lose the literal best receiver in football and still be the 5th best offense in football, I think anybody who can pull that off would be very happy about being able to get away with that.
Right. I mean, I don't think there's any question the sense that, Aaron Rodgers papers over a lot, right? He's the best deodorant in football. There's no question about it. Now, that said, it's funny to me that people do such a big deal about losing Davante for obvious reasons. Like you said, best receiver in football. Of course, you're going to miss him. But the things that brought them kind of down last year weren't necessarily Davante byproducts, whether you're talking about early downs and their efficiency, especially in the run game, and making sure that they were staying ahead of the sticks, something they did outstandingly well in 2020, or their red zone efficiency. I mean, they completely fell off the map in the red zone last year in a way that was really surprising, given how easy things looked the previous season. Like, neither one of those were really Davante centric, but those are the things. Like, to me, a large part of that staying ahead of the sticks thing is staying healthy up front. I think that was a direct byproduct. But I do think those two things are the main things to look at with the Green Bay offense this year.
It's funny because we expect so much from Rodgers and so much from the Green Bay offense. They ranked 9th in DVOA in the red zone last year, and it feels like a fall off.
It was a fall off from the previous
overall
season,
they were 2nd.
Yes, comparative to the rest of the league.
10.
Right.
I should point out, by the way, for people who are watching who may not normally watch the Football Outsiders live stream, who are Packers fans or CheeseheadTV watchers, you may be shocked at the graphic with our simulation from this year that we only have 9.3 average wins for the Packers. I point out our simulation is notoriously conservative where everything groups around 500. And this year came out even more conservative than usual. Like, it's something I have to look at some point. So it's not actually that much lower than where they were last year. Last year, they were 8th in DVOA, and this year they're projected to be 11th. It's not that much lower. What is controversial, I would think, for Packers fans is that we have the Vikings slightly ahead of the Packers because while the Packers are better on offense, the Vikings are projected to be better on special teams with an easier schedule and similar defenses. The special teams, I think, we all expect it to be better because special teams
nowhere to go but up.
Year to year, nowhere to go but up, right? So the defense is, I think, where a lot of the discussion has been, because I certainly said a couple months ago to a tweet, I think Mina Kimes tweeted about how the Packers could have a top 5 defense. Mm-hmm. And I said, I don't see it based on their performance over the last couple of years. They've been a very average or slightly below average defense. Even a couple of years ago when Jair Alexander was healthy, even last year when Rashawn Gary was improved and Kenny Clark's been there. It's not like Kenny Clark's new, like he's been there every year. And Devondre Campbell was there last year and played really, really well. And they were still kind of average. So let's talk about the defense. And I know, Derrik, you feel that the parts are more than the whole.
Yeah, I think it's just, for me in particular, I understand the, cause for pessimism, just in the sense of like, you can only expect rookies to do so much. But I think specifically with Quay Walker, he fundamentally changes like how the defense looks, because last year they could not play with a second linebacker. Like, they tried at certain points, but like Chris Barnes really couldn't do anything in coverage. So he was a liability anytime he was on the field. And then Oren Burks was the opposite, where he was kind of okay in coverage, but a complete liability against the run. I think because Walker kind of walks the line and does a little bit of both. I mean, if you watch him at Georgia, he was the guy that they were pushing out to cover against trips, to cover against the wide side of the field. When they needed a guy to cover, it was Walker. He was like the bridge between their insane pressure packages and all the cool stuff they were doing on the back end. He was like the glue that held it together. I think he can do a lot of that in Green Bay, because if you watch their defense last year, because of the way they emptied out the box and like the middle of the field, it put an unbelievable amount of stress on those safeties. And I think with a little more help from Walker and whatever they can get out of Devonta Wyatt in terms of, potentially giving some more pressure, I think it just eases so much pressure off of those guys. And I think when they don't have so much on their mind, I think they're both really, really good playmakers when they have opportunities. So I think that's kind of I think there's just so many cascading effects from Walker, and then add that on top of, getting maybe the second best cornerback in football back. Pretty good, I think.
I mean, that's the thing. We tend to forget, I think, as this offseason goes on and you start looking at the numbers, right? I mean, they missed a significant amount of time with Jair Alexander last year.
Yeah.
And they missed an entire season with Zadarius Smith. Now, obviously, Zadarius has gone on to Minnesota, but I do think you look at the pieces and then you look at the additions. Getting Rasul back, getting Devondre Campbell back, no question. They had to do that. I mean, to continue on and keep developing. And that's the other thing. You talk about, the last few years. Well, that's true. I'm not going to argue with you about whatever Mike Pettin was doing, but
right. I'm thinking more the last 2 years. Like I'm not.
I know. But Joe Barry's only been in town for 1 year, and that was a scheme change, and there were certainly issues, especially against the run. And I tell you what, you add Wyatt, you add Dron Reed, you start getting a little more stout up front. You're running those guys out there instead of Tyler Lancaster. I think you're going to be a little bit better on early downs, and then it all comes down to managing injuries, right? Because injuries are that's a fact of life in the NFL. Looking on paper right now here in late July, it's a really good defensive unit. Now, how are you going to respond if you do miss a stretch with Jair Alexander, or let's say Kenny Clark goes down for a little bit? Those, more than anything, will determine the Packers defense and their performance this year, because I think all their frontline guys, I'm absolutely sold on. The depth, that's where things get dicey. So if they start having to roll into their fourth, fifth corner or something, or, a deep pocketed outside linebacker group, of which there's just not a lot there, then yeah, there might be issues. But if they stay relatively healthy, this will be at least a top 10 unit. And yes, I think they'll be sniffing top 5.
I will say this about Douglas, which is I feel like, just like you have to remember that Jair Alexander is coming back and is really good, you have to temper your expectations for Douglas, because cornerbacks are notoriously inconsistent. And the year that he had last year is completely out of place in his career.
Right.
I know that, like, Derrik in the chapter gives some quotes that Douglas gave about feeling that this scheme helped him play better, and that might be a reason why he can continue to play at the level he played last year. But like, the level he played at last year is a level he never played at before.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, you look at the fact that this is his 6th NFL team should tell you, like, okay, yeah, he really hasn't found a home until getting to Green Bay, and he certainly hit the ground running. I mean, they literally signed him that week when he made the big play to win the Arizona game. That's, most people don't just start like that. And then the back-to-back pick sixes in, subsequent weeks, which hadn't happened since like Herb Adderley was in town. So it's, he definitely announced his presence with authority. No question about it. It can be volatile as far as like a performance from a corner year after year. But I do think, again, developing the system, having Jair across from you for the majority of the time, or Stokes, if they kick Jair inside, which they probably will at times, I just think, man, it bodes well for him. And I think he's in the best spot he's been in the NFL. I don't expect pick sixes every week. I mean, even Charles Woodson couldn't do that. But I think his level of play, if he is just week in and week out, gives them what he gave them last year as far as consistency, they'll be cooking with gas.
Stokes had a nice rookie year, by the way, and he's not somebody.
And I think an underappreciated
people outside of Green Bay are not really cognizant of him, because he wasn't like a super hyped prospect.
Well, exactly. He was late first round. The Rodgers drama last summer really kind of masked anything about their draft, let alone their first round pick, because all the conversation was about Rodgers. So like Stokes didn't get a lot of shine.
Stokes is also a player where like his bad plays just look horrific. And those are really easy to remember if you're only watching a few Packers games, whenever they're on primetime or whatever. But yeah, if you go back and watch his season, he was pretty good. Like he was one of the better, more productive rookie corners that we've seen in a long time, actually.
You would have liked to have seen him hold on to a few interceptions. I mean, I think if there's one knock, That's the thing. He's
his
around
ball
the ball.
skills are a little.
Which is funny because it's kind of like Jair Alexander in that way. Like Jair's kind of the same way. So as long as you're not giving up big plays, and he did give up a few last year, but that's his rookie year, and he was playing a hell of a lot more than they ever expected him to because of the injury to Jair. So that, those banked reps, that experience. Now he's in year 2. Love it for Green Bay.
And the last thing I would add on Douglas is like, he really just has to be a better player than Chandon Sullivan, which I don't think is a very high bar, and I think he can definitely do that.
I think you're onto something there. Yes, definitely.
MG asks, will Savage get many interceptions? He had 2 last year.
If he can hold on to them.
Yes, that's another. There. Here's the thing. He made a number of big plays 2 years ago, right? And then they made the scheme change. And I don't know if it's because they play so much too high, what he's asked to do, etc. The big plays just didn't flow last year the way they had the previous season. That said, it's fascinating to me to watch kind of the narrative around Packers media and fans about, oh, he had a disappointing year. And I don't buy that. I think he was fine.
He was good.
Probably not as dynamic as you would have liked, especially considering his physical skills. But I do wonder, given what you were talking about earlier about Quay Walker, is he allowed to do a little bit more near the box? Because he, under Pettin, was so good. The closer he got to the line of scrimmage, the better his play became. I do wonder if there's more kind of mixing and matching, allowing Quay to take that seam stuff and giving Savage a few more opportunities to freelance, go get the football, etc. Here's hoping.
Nate Rogers asks, what is more likely, Aaron Rodgers winning a 3rd MVP in a row or TJ Watt winning the sack title for the 3rd time in a row?
I think it's Aaron Rodgers.
I think it is too, and I think the reason is you would think initially like, oh, because he doesn't have Devontae, it's going to be harder to win MVP. But now we already have it in our minds.
Votes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so
if he's like one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the league, people will go,
Right.
oh, and look what he did without. Although
Exactly.
what we're going to end up doing is having this discussion about look what Aaron Rodgers did without Devontae Adams versus look what Patrick Mahomes did.
Mahomes is doing without Tyreek Hill, 100%. Maybe they split the vote. Right? Maybe they get the merits because they're just so good that no one can decide between the two, which is entirely possible.
It would be tough for Watt to have that many sacks again, but doesn't need that many sacks to win the sack title. But I think you guys are right. I think it would be Rodgers by a little bit is more likely.
Just slightly. And I know I'm obviously sitting outside Lambeau Field and I am a total homer, but I just think it's probably the probabilities, probably Rodgers.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like Rodgers can get help narrative wise. For the sack title, there's no narrative help.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Pure numbers. Right. Yep. Very true. Very true.
I will point out one of the reasons I voted for Rodgers last year over Brady was the idea that he overcame the injuries on his offensive line. So the last thing we should probably talk about
to that point, can I just say something that has not been talked about at all is exactly what you're talking about. And the sense, if you want an example of what Schatz is talking about here, go watch the Rams game. I mean, there are plays, especially on 3rd down, where Aaron Donald and company are in his lap less than 2 seconds after the snap of the ball. And he's getting the ball out. He's completing passes on 3rd down. It's an insane performance. And it's the type of stuff he was doing all year long that no one talks about.
Nijman, not
Josh
sure how
Nijman.
Yeah. Josh Nijman, he had a good year. Like he was a reasonable replacement.
I tell you what, when he had to start week 3, I thought they were dead, and he came in and really held his own. I was pleasantly surprised.
What's the word about Bakhtiari and about Elgin Jenkins as far as Jenkins, when they're coming back?
Yeah, with Jenkins, I think the suspicion has always been we'll probably start on PUP, which this year is 4 weeks for the first time. I would be surprised if he's ready for week 1. With Bakhtiari, like it's so disheartening to hear, to come in and see that he's been placed on PUP. I know there was a report from ESPN that he suffered some kind of setback during rehab, which is just awful considering everything he went through last year trying to get back on the field. I mean, there's no scuttlebutt about anything when it comes to Dave's health that can get out of anyone. I think the Packers are always going to be conservative, right? They are notoriously conservative. And when I talked to David for an interview at the end of last season, he kind of wanted to get his, kind of story out there as far as why he missed an entire year. And he talked about Doc McKenzie, the Packers doctor, saying, "We don't want you back for 3 games. We want you back for 3 years," is the quote that he used. And I was like, that tracks with how the Packers operate. Whatever Martellus Bennett may tell you, they always err on the side of caution. So I hope, as Packers fans are hoping, that this is just more of that, and that at some point in camp he comes off PUP and is at least in the conversation for week 1. But we'll start to know more tomorrow.
Dr. Dazzle asks, would they start 1-2 after 3 games? They have a sort of a hard start. Which of the away games is a win? They start with at Minnesota, Chicago at home, and then at Tampa Bay. And listen, as much as we're higher on Minnesota than anybody else, I would think that if they're going to win one of those 2 away games, it's going to be at Minnesota. And by the way, the schedule gets a lot easier after that with Patriots, Giants, Jets.
Although Giants is in London, anything can happen. And then coming back from London, you play right away. Lots of times teams get a bye week coming back from London. The Packers declined that and decided we want to play right away. And so they're playing the Jets coming off that jet lag trip. So who knows? I'm just saying.
It's not any more jet lag than going from Los Angeles to New York.
I know. Well, it's a little bit. But I will say, as far as that 1-2 question, I think it's an excellent question. I think the problem down in Tampa, the Packers have just never performed well down in Florida. It's some kind of bugaboo. Rodgers is part of that too. He just has not played well. Not played well against that defense. It's been a house of horrors. Maybe not having Devontae forces him to spread it around. Maybe Matt LaFleur says, hey, we should maybe try to run the ball a little bit instead of throw it all over the yard against this incredible pass rush. Who knows? I don't know. We'll see.
One more. MZ says Bakhtiari mentioned it was Rodgers who wanted him to get some reps, and then Bakhtiari had a setback. Did he play just because Rodgers wanted him to?
No, I know Rodgers put that out there on McAfee. Clearly, Rodgers wanted him out there. There's no doubt about it. But that was very much a discussion within the entire kind of football part of the organization, right?
Right.
There's no doubt that Bakhtiari was feeling the issue with his knee all year long. And at some point, they were getting ready for the playoffs, and he felt kind of duty bound, honor bound, so to speak, to show people, okay, this is, I can do this. And he didn't necessarily suffer a setback in that game. It's just the fluid issue that he was dealing with all year long just kept popping up. So it wasn't in the sense of like something popped or something tore, you know what I mean? Like it was just a continuation of what he'd been dealing with all year long. I mean, don't forget, as he told me, he had his knee drained over 15 times last year. I tell you to go YouTube, knee drainage, but it's disgusting, and I don't want to ruin your lunch. It was just a really unfortunate kind of situation with Dave, and it sure sounds like it might be something they're dealing with for a while here in Green Bay.